This is getting vulnerable. Hey everyone, I'm Abbey Sharp. Welcome to Abby's Kitchen. Today's video is sponsored by Let's Get Checked, and we are back with part 7 of our review of Jaclyn Hill's wellness journey. But first, let me tell you about my sponsor, Let's Get Checked. So I get a lot of questions every day about whether or not a person needs a certain supplement, and my answer to that question is always, it depends. There's no for sure way for me to actually know if you need vitamin D or B12 or like thyroid support or whatever without data from a credible test. So Let's Get Checked is finally making professional health testing more accessible and easy for you at home with their wide range of wellness tests. The way it works is you choose your test online and it's delivered to you the next day. Then you collect your sample, return it with the prepaid shipping label, and you get your confidential results within 2 to 5 days. And the key here is that you don't have to interpret them yourself. A physician will review your results and a nurse will contact you for a virtual consultation. And if a prescription is warranted, then of course the doctor can write it right there. But Let's Get Checked labs are CLIA approved and CAP accredited, which are the highest level of accreditation. So you can rest assured that your results are reliable. So if you want to get tested at home, use my promo code Abbey Sharp for 30% off using my link below. Okay, so basically we are back again to revisit Jaclyn's wellness saga.
Oh boy.
But if you missed my most recent video, you can check that out right here. So today we're going to be taking a look at Jaclyn's February 21st video, opening up about my biggest struggle. And of course, you can pause the screen or look at my description to check out my general disclaimer, including a trigger warning to those with current or previous experiences with disordered eating. Also a note that this is a unique video in the series because Jaclyn is focusing more on her struggles with alcohol use. So another major trigger warning that we will be discussing alcohol use disorder, and I will also be leaving some resources down in the description below if you are currently struggling and need some support. Also a reminder that I'm not a therapist or a substance abuse expert, but I will be speaking from my own perspective as a registered dietitian. And if you are not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Abby's Kitchen. All right, let's get into it.
I'm doing a therapy called neurofeedback. I've talked about it before and I go several days a week. I've been doing so much better. Therapy is definitely helping me. I have not cared about my diet at all, you guys, at all. When I first started this, I was 183 and then I dropped all the way down to 170 and now I'm back to 175.
Okay, so when we last caught up with Jaclyn, she put her weight loss journey on hold to focus on her mental health and therapy, which made sense to me because food issues are often used as ineffective coping mechanisms when mental or emotional needs are just not being met. And often this preoccupation with weight and food tends to kind of soften when we learn better coping strategies. And remember, this is the same girl who spiraled after a minor and very normal 2-pound increase on the scale. So the fact that she's talking about her weight regain with like a smile on her face feels like a huge breakthrough to me. And I am just so very proud of her.
I became very dependent on alcohol. I use alcohol to cope with anxiety. And as my anxiety has been getting so much better, I have been able to cut back on alcohol, which has been amazing.
Okay, so not unlike when people use food to deal with negative emotions, when alcohol becomes like a primary coping mechanism, it does risk becoming a serious problem. Not surprisingly, it's quite common for anxiety disorders and alcohol use disorders to co-occur, with research suggesting that up to 50% of folks receiving treatment for alcohol use disorder also suffer from an anxiety disorder. And according to some research, drinking to cope among folks with anxiety may actually result in a 5-fold increase for developing an alcohol use disorder within 3 months. And FYI, I'm using alcohol use disorder because that is is the official term for like alcohol abuse or alcohol dependence. But it's also worth noting that alcohol doesn't cure anxiety. It actually often creates like a bit of a cyclical effect that causes your anxiety to actually feel worse, which then increases your desire to drink, and it can kind of spiral from there. But as is the case with a turbulent relationship with food, an unhealthy relationship with alcohol often also has a root cause. And I'm so happy to see her working through those root causes in therapy.
So bad for me mentally, physically, for inflammation. People have their vices, and I know for me at one point my vice was coloring. Like just adult coloring books was just helping me so much, and that's how I was coping. And I need to find things like that again, whether it be working out or going on walks or whatever it is.
Okay, so I applaud Jaclyn for recognizing this within herself and for sharing it with the world. And I am not an addictions counselor again, but acknowledging the problem is a really important first step. It is very hard to take the next step to actually take action to change behaviors if you're not convinced that they're problematic in the first place. So to help better support this process, it's essential that Jaclyn begin to explore other coping mechanisms for her anxiety. And all of the strategies that she mentioned, like adult coloring books, walks, spending time with Jordan, etc., are all super great. We also know that lifestyle behaviors like quality sleep, meditation, yoga, and adequate nutrition can also help to reduce anxiety. Extreme dieting, on the other hand, is often just like adding kindle to the fire. When we undereat, our cortisol levels increase because undereating is an actual physical stressor on the body, which research suggests can actually exacerbate the effects of anxiety. So I am so glad that we put the weight loss leg of her journey on the back burner.
I gotta start taking care of myself because we need kids. We need a family, and I need to fit into my dream dress. So amongst all this, I need to get that bod. I need to get that bod, okay?
Never mind.
And it's gone.
Now, I am all for self-care and doing what you can to help support your health and fertility if you're preparing yourself to conceive. But didn't she just say that she stopped caring about like the weight loss diet? The devil works hard, folks, but diet culture works harder.
Get your ass up and work.
And unfortunately, the wedding body is one of diet culture's easiest targets. And while my professional opinion is that the wedding body should really not be a priority right now at all, if there's also a goal for optimizing health for fertility, we definitely need to tread lightly here. We do know that extreme restriction and weight loss can and does negatively impact fertility. So if baby making is the goal, getting the alcohol intake to a healthier place is key, but not at the expense necessarily of getting an adequate nutrition.
Typically before I would go to like a new place, because I have such bad social anxiety, I would have a drink before I leave. Like, I'm not trying to get drunk or anything like that, but just like one shot is enough to take like the edge off. I'm gonna go try a new place we've never been to before, and I'm not going to try to self-medicate myself with anything. I'm just going, and if I get anxious, I get anxious, and we'll work through it.
We ate, and I just got so anxious that we had to leave. I just like out of nowhere just got so anxious. Like all of a sudden the music, like I feel like everything became overstimulated.
I am getting secondhand anxiety watching this, as I can heavily relate to that feeling of like stimulation overload and needing to GTFO ASAP. But according to the research, about 20% of folks with social anxiety disorder also suffer from alcohol use disorder. And while a lot of people can safely have like a little bit of alcohol to calm their nerves on occasion, it does come down to frequency, dependency, and the reinforcing powers of avoiding situations without a drink. So folks like me and maybe Jaclyn, who struggle with anxiety, often make associations between a general anxiety trigger or like a negative experience and a full-blown fear a little more readily than those without anxiety. So the easiest thing to do is obviously to avoid the discomfort preemptively, which actually only reinforces and strengthens our fears as kind of like a fact. It often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what Jaclyn did here is what we call exposure therapy. And it's not surprisingly been shown to be a very effective treatment strategy for social anxiety. Basically, you repeatedly expose yourself to the situation that triggers the anxiety. And the idea is that after a while of repeated exposure, your reaction tends to decline. The same strategy is often implemented in eating disorder recovery as a way to normalize fear foods. And in insomnia therapy, therapy to desensitize yourself to different sleep habits. But because it's obviously really scary to face your fears head on, it can often be helpful to have a few healthy coping strategies in your back pocket to help ease the nerves. So things like breathing and relaxation techniques, calming tea, like a soothing playlist, or a safe support person by your side. So I'm really, really proud of Jaclyn for making this leap.
It's been a solid 9 days of me cutting back on my drinking and no longer using it as a medicine, no longer using it to self-medicate. I have not given into it, really. Well, I did once. I had a quick drink when I was super stressed out earlier today. It's been really hard, but I have to say, overcoming it feels so good. I'm not gonna drink right now, I'm done. Like, I'm so sick of it, like almost in like a manic way. Like I'm not doing this anymore. I don't care how bad my anxiety is. Really working and focusing on anxiety has been a very big thing for me.
So it sounds to me like Jaclyn is trying to abstain from alcohol altogether, not unlike her very kind of regimented, restrictive approach to her diet in the past. Now, I'm not suggesting that Jaclyn has like an ED, but it is worth pointing out that it's common for folks with complicated histories with food to kind of play out the same types of restrictive or binge symptoms in other areas of their life. So we call these life symptoms. So for example, folks who have binge eating tendencies with food may also find that they binge on things like shopping or relationships or alcohol. Usually there's a root cause, and the substance or activity is just a bit of a distraction. Now, a lot of people challenge me on intuitive eating saying, well, you wouldn't tell an alcoholic to have a drink in moderation, so why is it okay to tell somebody to have, less nutritious food in moderation? And I think this question is often bound up in a lot of ignorance of the intuitive eating model, but the major differences here are twofold. One, the concept of food addiction is very much contested and not confirmed by the data, even though, of course, people may feel addicted to food, but alcohol use disorder is confirmed by data. And two, we can abstain from alcohol if it's not adding to our life, but we obviously can't abstain from food. Alcohol also can actually make listening to our body cues a lot more difficult, but eating can make listening to our body cues more clear. I also spoke to my sister, Dr. Skye Fitzpatrick, who is a clinical psychologist, and she said that a lot of clinicians support a relapse prevention model for folks with alcohol use disorder, where the goal is to reduce use or make it safer rather than abstain completely. And this is not unlike my approach with triggering foods. Now, it's important to note that for some folks, abstinence from alcohol is absolutely what's going to work best. And again, that is still 100% compatible with intuitive eating because alcohol is not an essential substance like food. So this might work for Jaclyn, but I also worry about her falling into the same kind of abstain, binge, regret, repeat cycle that she has done in the past with food. So in all of these situations, there needs to be like a personal risk-benefit analysis done with a therapy team.
I just let the craving pass, and things like ice cream helps. And I don't care if I put on a little weight right now. I don't love that idea, but if it means I'm gonna get away from alcohol and end this relationship that I have with it, I don't really care if I put on a few pounds in the meantime, because I think that that's way more important than anything else.
So I am so relieved to hear that her weight loss goals are kind of taking a back seat, but I do caution about kind of swapping one numbing strategy for another. I think it'd be a very different story if Jaclyn had a more stable relationship with food, but given her strong emotional eating tendencies in the past, we don't necessarily want, ice cream to become the only coping alternative to alcohol. And this is not to say that she shouldn't eat ice cream when she's feeling it. Everyone should eat ice cream when they're feeling it. But it comes down to the intention behind it. Is she eating ice cream because that's what's going to truly bring her emotional satisfaction? Or is she eating ice cream as a way to distract and numb herself from some of the tough emotions, or to keep her mouth busy when she wants a glass of wine? Now, I appreciate her prioritizing her health over weight loss goals in this scene, but 2 minutes ago, she was also going off about getting her wedding bod. So as usual, we're getting a little bit of a murky picture of intentions. Now, my main concern is that while she's giving herself a bit of a permission slip to gain some weight right now, when she does pivot back to weight loss for maybe her wedding and fitting into the wedding dress, I'm worried that any weight gained may trigger another downward spiral. So it's important that those emotional regulation strategies are in place now to better support any ups and downs that may arise in the future.
The stronger I'm being and the less I drink and the more I fight through and allow myself just to feel anxiety, the less I have anxiety this past week, which is crazy.
As someone who has lived experience with anxiety my whole life, I can say that feeling the feelings is very hard and extremely uncomfortable. But as they say, you often gotta feel it to heal it. And just as I mentioned with exposure therapy, the more you just kind of sit with the discomfort, the less power those feelings will own.
I haven't cut it out completely. I want you guys to be aware of that. Like, I have not gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm not drinking for the next 30 days or 60 days or 90 days or a year, whatever it may be. It's not like that. I am just allowing myself to drink in moderation when it's appropriate, and I'm not using it to self-medicate. You know what I'm saying? So like at my engagement party, I had 3 drinks while I was there.
Okay, so it looks like we're pivoting to a more relapse prevention model. And perhaps Jaclyn has kind of realized that in the past, she's put restricted food on a pedestal, which only served to make it more desirable in the end. It also seems that she's starting to distinguish between her intention behind the drinking. So whether it's for social reasons or to cope with stress. And the same intention analysis can be applied to her relationship with food. Is this for nourishment and satisfaction? Is this an emotional choice? Or is it a means of restriction or to satisfy ravenous hunger? So whether we're talking about food or alcohol, we can apply some of those same intuitive approaches from a place of self-care, not self-control.
Since I cut back so much on alcohol, I decided I'm not gonna focus on my diet because that's not what's important right now. Like, cutting out the alcohol is so much more important. So I've been eating whatever I want, whenever I want. I've been craving sugar like you have no idea. And it turns into sugar in your body. So when I cut out the alcohol, you know, it's like 11 o'clock at night and I'm like, I want a Reese's. Like, I want an ice cream bar. And I let myself have it because I'm like, I'm not gonna deprive myself of that too. You know, one step at a time. I'm being realistic.
Okay, fact check. Alcohol itself doesn't convert into sugar in the body, but it does cause blood sugars to rise a little bit, more so obviously if the alcohol is mixed with like a sugar sweetened drink like soda or juice. But then after the liver processes the booze, you actually end up with very low blood sugar levels. And this is sometimes why we feel kind of shaky and ravenous in the morning after drinking.
Good morning.
My guess is that Jaclyn's sugar craving has more to do with her emotional eating tendencies and kind of getting that dopamine hit from sugar in the absence of alcohol. Some may call an experience like this like a transfer addiction, where one coping mechanism like sugar is replaced for another like alcohol.
I weighed myself today and I've lost 3.5 pounds in the last 3 weeks. And that's me eating so much junk. Goes to show how much denial I was in. Like, the inflammation that was in my blood work last year was so high, and I just didn't want to admit that it was alcohol. It was so much easier to change my diet and get my ass on the treadmill than it was to admit I have an alcohol problem.
So there is a positive correlation between weight gain and alcohol intake, and there are a few explanations for why this is. For one, alcohol is more energy dense than carbs or protein and provides about 7 calories per gram, and this of course would be increased when mixed with something like juice or soda, etc. 2, alcohol intake can also disrupt sleep quality, which can then increase appetite the next day. 3, chronic alcohol consumption can increase inflammation and water retention. And lastly, alcohol often leads to disinhibition, so we often end up eating more. Now, I imagine it took a long time to get to this breakthrough, so my hope for Jaclyn is that she continues to develop her sense of self-awareness, emotional support, and coping strategies for her anxiety so that she can not only positively impact her relationship with food and alcohol, but also manage any other future life symptoms that are thrown her way. So on that note, that is all that I have for you guys today. Thank you again to Let's Get Checked for sponsoring. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment below on what you'd like to see me review next. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye!